Um,
Oh,
well, you're blocking
I'm an
me.
audience member.
So am I.
Okay.
Okay.
Imagine the sun is setting and you're going about your nighttime routine when suddenly you hear rummaging coming from outside your house. You go to investigate, and what you find is a shock. An 8 foot long silhouette is dumping your trash all about, sniffing out what food. When it sees you, it looks at you, and you realize you've been vandalized by a black bear. These kinds of encounters are what we call a bear human encounter. These kinds of interactions are on the rise in North America and even in Indiana, where black bear sightings are rare. My name is Joshua Zielman. I'm a Purdue student and studying wildlife biology, and I have spent the time to research this topic. I will be describing and evaluating these encounters pertaining to the what, where, how, and why of the interactions, as well as any decisions managers and people can make to better cohabitate with these animals. Let's begin with the what. Bear human encounters have been on the rise in recent decades, according to multiple states and news outlets, including the state wildlife fisheries agencies of California, Vermont, Missouri, and South Carolina. The encounters are mainly recorded by the public, describing sighting reports to the state agencies, and each of them have seen a steady increase in the number of these cases being reported, which makes understanding these encounters so much more important. This graph, conducted by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, was created in order to show awareness of just what black bears are doing in the state of California. As you can tell, many of these are non-lethal interactions and mainly are nuisance or property damage. The graph also shows the estimated population of black bears, which alludes to a future point in this discussion about the effects of a rising bear population and what it has had on the bear-human encounters. As you can see by this graph, these bears are really just causing a nuisance. Human-bear conflicts are typically non-lethal as described before, but can still be damaging. According to a 2023 article by Parchizada et al., most conflicts are non-life-threatening and include things such as crop damage, livestock depredation, destruction of property, and a psychological response to threats on personal safety. The chart is from the same article and helps to illustrate the point that many of the bear's damages are usually just pesky annoyances or property damage. In fact, in the same study, they filed through multiple reports and found that 3,782 were of mild severity compared to the only about 1,000 being of high or moderate severity. Another important aspect of bear human encounters is the where. These interactions are most likely to happen in places that are at the urban wildland interface, essentially where human settlement meets the forest. This obviously makes sense, as is the meeting of the two habitats of humans and bears. So you're gonna run into a lot of bears. Where the bears live, there's gonna be bears. Many articles, including a 2011 study by Merkel et al. And a 2022 study by Van Bommel et al., cite that one of the greatest drivers of the increase in bear-human encounters is the increase in spread of human development. As humans encroach more and more in the wildlands for housing, it puts humans in direct vicinity of the bear's home, as well as putting further pressure on the bear's resources, which can lead to bears trying to take advantage of human settlements. The Merkel et al. Study examined the probability of bear encounters as related to distance from forests and streams and found a negative relationship between the two. In other words, as the distance from forests decreases, the chance of a bear encounter increases, or as humans find themselves living closer and closer to the woods, the likelihood of them running into a bear increases. This principle is illustrated on the map where they have taken multiple points throughout a forest and use the computer to highlight the probability of an interaction with a bear depending on how far the point is from a stream or a forest. And as you can tell, the further it is from the streams and thus the forest, the lighter the color and the lower the probability. Move on. Let's move on to the how and why human bear encounters occur. The environment can play a role in the probability of a bear encounter, and Factors such as precipitation and population size can have a great influence on the chances of a bear-human altercation happening. This chart from Archizeta et al. Highlights multiple factors that could drive the increase in bear encounters, including population size and density, residents in a park or not, and the level of precipitation. We will take a closer look at precipitation and population size. Low levels of precipitation and drought-like conditions, as found by the 2023 article, can increase the likelihood of bear encounters, as explained by another article from 2014 by Baruch Mordo et al. In periods of drought, the food sources for black bears depreciates, which forces the bears to look elsewhere for food, including urban areas. The bears risk entering human areas for the chance to feed and thus increase the amount of bear-human encounters. The 2014 study developed the image showing black bear home ranges in the green in Aspen, Colorado, and their overlap with human settlements, the red. The image helps illustrate that the bears' home ranges severely overlap with human-occupied areas in times of drought or poor conditions, since red is the dominant color seen. The other environmental factor that leads to an increase in bear encounters is simply an increase in bear populations. As conservation efforts across the country have been implemented to support the growth of a once highly threatened species, the black bear population has and continues to increase, resulting in a higher probability of interactions. The Parjizda et al. Article and subsequent graph of their results shows this relationship, specifically stating that when more bears were present to capitalize on human resources, high or moderate severity conflicts increase. The article also links the potential conflicts with bears with management decisions made by New York State, which leads me to my final point. There are things that we can do on a personal or management level to help ease the pressure on bears and facilitate cohabitation. We need to identify the leading causes of the bear-human interactions and make subsequent actions to mitigate these and live more harmoniously with black bears. The leading driver of bear-human interactions, as reported by a 2007 article by Spencer et al., are anthropogenic attractants, such as garbage and food. This comes as no surprise considering many of the environmental factors were also reliant on bears' foraging behaviors and the need to eat and store fat for the winter. Because of this, better waste management principles should be implemented and people should try to leave their trash in the proper receptacles as much as possible, such as bear-proof trash cans. To further our relationship with black bears and decrease the chances for interactions, we can use education and PR protocols to inform people of mitigation strategies. A 2009 article by Don Carlos et al. Looked into the psychology of human responses to bears. Many people reported having more positive attitudes towards black bears, but there were still over 30% of respondents who had an overall negative view on bears. These views could impact how readily people uptake mitigation strategies, so a PR campaign for black bears could prove useful for both the bear and human safety. The same article also found that proactive education protocols would prove most effective in combating human-bear encounters with a combination of response protocols. In conclusion, the nature of a bear-human encounter is complicated, but can be understood. The encounters are usually non-lethal, but in the places where humans and bears meet, they can cause damage and become a nuisance. The reasons behind the interactions can be explained by multiple factors, but most importantly, bear encounters increase with a greater bear population, an increase in drought-like conditions, and an increase in food attractants. Through education and the implementation of mitigation strategies, we can help decrease the amount of bear encounters, especially those of high risk, and cohabitate better with the species whom we share the land with. Thank you for listening to my talk about bear-human interactions, and sorry for the bear-like sounds in the background. My dogs were fighting.